for those who have. So as Justine said, we will be talking about sleep, and I strongly encourage you to interrupt me, raise your hand, ask questions whenever you want, and we can have a discussion about anything. And I'll also be fielding any questions you want to talk about at the end as well. So, brief introduction for those of you that don't know me. I am a qualified nutritionist, registered with Bantam CNHC, they're the nutrition registry in the UK, and I practice functional medicine, which is like root cause medicine. We're looking for the root cause to deal with that, to get better outcomes with symptoms or optimization, whatever else you want to do, like this. And this is what we focus on: metabolic health, gut health, hormonal health, immune health, and then I address these things: nutrition, obviously, movement and exercise, supplementation, and stress management. Okay, so sleep. So sleep is a fundamental variable to address with health. So you've probably all had a bad night's sleep at some point, and you know how it makes you feel. That's a strong signal to you that it's probably not optimal to be lacking sleep. And if I had to say there was one variable that I'd want to improve above all else in my clients, it would be sleep. Obviously it's easy to say and more difficult to do. Sometimes you have to address other things to get there. But if we can improve sleep, everything will improve in your health. So, the importance of sleep. So, if you think about how much of a disadvantage sleep is evolutionarily, if we could be busy all night doing things, being productive, it would be amazing, right? So, it's an evolutionary disadvantage to literally lie still for 7 to 8 hours. So the fact that we do actually sleep, even though we're extremely vulnerable when we sleep, shows you just how important it was. If we could have eradicated it through evolution, we would have done, but we haven't. So how well you sleep is linked to basically every disease you can possibly think of. And I'm not going to dwell on this at all. I'm not going to talk about diseases at all in this presentation, because if anyone here was suffering with sleep and I start telling you how bad sleep is for you, that is going to make your sleep infinitely worse. So yeah, the negative, so if you think about the negative impact of poor sleep, it's not going to help your sleep at all. So we're definitely not going to talk about that. And if anyone wants to read into that, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker is a great book. And again, I wouldn't recommend that for someone who's struggling with their sleep. You can just listen to this presentation instead. Okay, so what happens when we sleep? So when we sleep, our brain organises our thoughts. At least it literally reorganises what we've learned that day. It reshuffles neurons, which are thought patterns in our brain. A really good way of observing this actually is if you teach a young kid something and then you talk to them about it the next day, the amount they've improved will be quite remarkable, because children have a very high degree of neuroplasticity in their brain. That's the ability to create neurons and learn. So I did this experiment with my 4-year-old kid, which was getting him to stand on one leg, which is quite challenging for a 4-year-old to do for a long period of time. They don't have like the muscle connections. So he was quite unstable and falling over. And then I did it the next day, and the improvement was, he was 100% better, how long he could stand on one leg. Okay, so that's happening with you as well. Obviously it's happening less as we age, but that's what's happening when we sleep. Our body repairs and rebuilds and recovers, so you are literally creating new tissue. You're improving from exercise. This is where most adaptation to your exercise happens. Our immune system cleans house, and what I mean by that is old cells get disposed of. So when a cell is old, it's called a senescent cell. It signals to be destroyed. That's called apoptosis, and the immune system circles around the body, finds these cells and destroys them. And then our sex hormones are produced, and men will know about that because morning glory in the morning. That is literally what is happening. So, and our metabolism, so our metabolism resets for the next day. So our metabolic, actually, as we go through the day, we all get slightly more insulin resistant. We go to sleep and we become more insulin sensitive, which is our metabolic health for the next day. So this is a normal night of sleep, which I'll talk you through. So they've overcomplicated it really. There's been 4 stages of sleep, but there's only really 3 stages of sleep you need to understand. And that's deep sleep, that's what's happening down here, stage 4 sleep, and REM sleep, which is what's happening here, this blue bit here, and then light sleep. Light sleep, for all intents and purposes, is transitionary sleep. You are transitioning to deep sleep, or from deep sleep to REM sleep, or anything like that. So this is what a healthy, normal night of sleep looks like. And actually, they've spread this out a bit. This should be more condensed this way. you'll notice that all the deep sleep happens early in the night. Okay, so your first 2 hours of sleep, that is pretty much where you do most repairing and restoration in your body. Okay. Later in the night, what you have is the blue stuff, so REM sleep, and so if we think about deep sleep as that's your body repairing, this is your mind repairing. Okay. And anecdotally, we find people who have insomnia, if they have insomnia, whether you struggle to go to sleep, they feel fatigued. This is anecdotal, but there is some evidence behind this. They feel more tired in their body. Whereas if you wake up in the night and then you can't go back to sleep for this part of the night, you feel more tired in your brain, generally people report. So if you see someone in deep sleep, they will be completely still. Their eyes will actually be rolled up into the back of their head. You won't be able to see that. REM means rapid eye movement. If you see someone who's in REM sleep, and you looked at them, you'd notice that their eyes were moving rapidly under their eyelids, and that's because you're dreaming. And it's that dreaming that is the reorganization of your thoughts and your learning processes, and you processing literally everything that you learned that day. Okay, so you can see with deep sleep, growth hormone is released. So growth hormone is your signal to rebuild and repair. And you will also notice that you wake up a lot of times in the night, and that is absolutely normal. It's normal to have between 6 and 8 wakings per night. Most of the time you won't even remember them. You'll just roll over and go straight back to sleep. But if you wake up in the night and you have a sip of water or you go for a pee, that's kind of okay as long as you go back to sleep. Okay, where it's not normal is if you then can't go back to sleep. Okay, any questions about that?
Can you not have a certain type of sleep? Because I'm not sure whether
yes, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
Oh, REM. Okay, if you don't have REM sleep, you're going to have trouble thinking the next day. You'll have cognitive impairment.
Because I never dream.
Yes,
yeah, dreaming, and my watch also tells me I don't have REM sleep, but I'm not sure that I can believe that.
So you will have REM sleep almost certainly. The only dream we remember is the one we have right before we wake up. Okay, and actually that dream that you remember is only, it might feel like it's 30 minutes or something. It's 5 seconds. Literally, it's a thought that plays out over 5 seconds. So that just means you don't remember that. But you will definitely be dreaming, and you almost definitely have deep sleep. If you don't have, REM sleep. If you don't have deep sleep, there's documented cases of people in sleep studies, and they don't have deep sleep, and they sleep sometimes for 11, 12 hours, and they will not feel refreshed. And the same is the case for REM sleep, but to a less degree. If you are completely missing out on these portions of sleep, you won't feel normal the next day. Does that make sense? Okay. And light sleep is transitioning. So, interestingly enough, stage 1 sleep, what they consider stage 1 sleep, which I'm not really getting into, but you're actually awake, believe it or not. You're completely conscious of what's going on. They call it, that's actually technically stage 1 sleep. Okay, so how long should we sleep? Okay, lots of people have opinions on this, I'm sure. So, researchers went to study 3 sets of hunter-gatherer tribes. So hunter-gatherers act as a really good control to post-industrialized people, because it's probably evidence of how we all kind of evolved. So the Hadza of Tanzania, the Chaga of Kenya, who aren't really hunter-gatherers, and the Tsimane of Bolivia. Okay. So they all had biphasic sleep, so they slept twice. I'll get into what that looked like. And all tribal members had a different sleep schedule. And this is important, we'll definitely talk about this later. So they would find there were people who went to bed early and got up early, people went to bed late, got up late, and everything. So there was always someone awake. And obviously, if you're living in a tribe, that makes perfect sense, right? You need someone to look after the babies, someone to keep the fire going, someone to watch for danger. So they all had a different sleep schedule. And they found that they would sleep on average for 6.5 hours, which is interesting. And that was 5.5 hours at night, so not very long through the night, and then 1 hour in the afternoon. And they had no concept of a bad night's sleep. They didn't even have a word for insomnia. So they all felt absolutely fine on that level of sleep. Now, I don't have an answer for why they slept like that. And now I'm going to show you in a minute what post-industrial sleep looks like. There are only hypotheses. The hypothesis is they're healthier than us. Maybe the biphasic sleep, maybe there's something in that. There is something to say you need less sleep if you are healthier. These guys don't really look like us. I mean, like the Hadza men are average 10 stone, but we don't know. But ultimately, some of the healthiest humans on the planet don't sleep that long. This is, so this is what we look like, post-industrial people. So this is normal sleep. So you can see here, 7 to 9 hours, that is 85% of people. Okay, so that's your sleep requirements are likely to be, strongly likely to be, between 7 and 9 hours. Okay, if we go from 7 hours and then up, everything above that, that's about 95% of people. If we take 6.5 hours and above, that's like 98% of people. So there are people who are genetic, there are genetic SNPs, that's the genetic polymorphisms, who are short sleepers. They're very, very rare. And people who are 4-hour sleepers, who it's like 1 in a million or something like that, they actually have all phases of sleep, but it's condensed. So they do the 1 to 2 hours of deep sleep, and they do the 2 to 3 hours of REM sleep within 4 hours. And they're still healthy with 4 hours of sleep. Apparently Margaret Thatcher was one of these, by the way. But I don't know if that's actually true, but she ended up getting Alzheimer's as well, so maybe not. So that is the genetic spectrum of how long you sleep. Does that make sense? Any questions about any of that? Okay.
Is that in one go or in 2 goes?
It can be either actually, because obviously in the Mediterranean they have siestas. So you can have biphasic sleep and be completely healthy. That's fun, and arguably based on the hunter-gatherers, maybe that's what we're meant to do. And maybe that's why it's so difficult for us to get all phases of sleep in one go. Maybe that's why we need more sleep. So that is over the course of 24 hours. Okay, so what controls our sleep? So sleep drive, your drive to sleep. And this is mediated by something called adenosine in your body. So adenosine is a byproduct of energy use. So ATP, which you may have heard of, adenosine triphosphate, that is your currency of energy that's made in your cell. You break that down to produce energy, and the byproduct is adenosine. So as you're going about your day and you're using energy, you are making more adenosine, you are increasing your sleep drive. So it builds up through the day, and the more adenosine we have, the greater our sleep drive. And this is how caffeine works. It actually blocks your adenosine receptors, and that's what makes you feel more alert. That's actually what wakes you up. So this is our adenosine levels over a day. So you can see, very low at 6 in the morning when you wake up, and it gradually builds up through the day. Okay, so obviously one thing that contributes to this is an appropriate amount of activity. If you don't do anything in the day, for example, you are not going to be as tired because you are not going to make as much adenosine. Okay, hormones. So cortisol is our primary wakeful hormone, and melatonin is our primary sleep hormone. They're antagonistic. So when one is high, the other is low. They don't exist together for kind of obvious reasons. So, and they work on a daily circadian rhythm, which looks like this. So quite self-explanatory. Cortisol high in the morning, that's literally what wakes you up. It starts rising at sort of 3 in the morning. That wakes you up around here, and then as it comes down, that's when you feel sleepy, and that's when melatonin increases. So I've got a question for you guys. What do you think is the main control of that cycle? Absolutely, yeah, it's light. Light is the main control for that cycle. The second main control is food, digestion. That's actually stimulating to us, and the third is activity. So yeah, light is basically what controls it.
How does that play out if you move to the northern latitude, so in northern Scotland, Iceland, Greenland, and somewhere very, very long, big, wide seasonal fluctuations?
Well, seasonal affective disorder is like tied to this there, and that's a big problem if they don't have light. That's why you can buy these, actually get them on Amazon, these lights that mimic daylight. And obviously when we talk about solutions for sleep, light's a massive one. Making sure you get light in your face, sunlight specifically, in your face during the day is very important to set up your sleep that night. So we'll definitely talk about that more later. Okay. So that all makes sense so far. Right, now we're going to go off the deep end. This starts to get really weird. But I promise you, I am not making this up. This is all science. So chronotypes. So if you remember back to our hunter-gatherers, they all had a different sleep schedule. So a chronotype is how people have slightly different circadian rhythms. Okay, it's actually embedded in our genetics. So to hunter-gatherers, this was so advantageous to have people awake at different times. It's actually encoded through evolution into our genes. So we have different chronotypes. And really the relevance of this is if you try and be a chronotype you're not, it's going to end up in bad sleep, and you're end up going to end up feeling not great. So the chronotypes. So everyone's heard of morning larks and night owls, and it's actually more complicated than that. There's actually 4 distinct chronotypes, and this is where it gets weird. Okay, so psychological science determined that the 4 chronotypes, they've named them after animals, and they've named them after animals that most represent the behaviour of that sleep-wake schedule. Okay, so the first one is a bear. And this is most people, right? So most people in this room, I know I am for sure, are bears. And our whole society is based around bear timings, because that's most people, the vast majority of people. So our school schedule, our work schedule, everything's based around bears, which really sucks for the other ones, obviously, because they're at a disadvantage. You go to bed at about 10 to 11, you wake up at about 6 to 7, you are most productive between 10 and 2. You're generally friendly. Open-minded. I'm not making this up, I promise you. Open-minded and agreeable. And that is most people. That's what our whole society is based on.
I'll claim that one. My name in Norwegian means bear.
And then the second most common chronotype is the wolf. Okay? And these are your night owls. About 20% of all people, so we might have some wolves. They go to sleep between 11 and midnight. I actually have some clients who I would say, who would fall into this category, and they're going to sleep at 1 and doing fine doing that actually. So it's very interesting. Wake up at 7 to 9, and again, the ones I think of that go to bed at 1 are getting up more like 8 to 9. Most productive in the evenings, 6 to 9. Impulsive, creative, and pessimistic. And I would say, and I haven't met someone through my clients I would consider a wolf. They are always artists, or musicians, or in media, or working in film, or something like that. Okay? And they really suffer. If you try to put them on a bear schedule, they will really, really suffer. So I'm going to talk about how you might know which one you are. Okay, this one, which is what everyone wants to be, particularly men, is the lion. And this is morning people, so these are the morning larks, so 18% of the population. So we've covered up actually 98%. So you're an early sleeper, you're an early riser, productive in the mornings, conscientious, very hardworking, logical, and optimistic. And if you are a morning workout person, this might be you. Okay. And this is the last one that no one wants to be, which is dolphin. And it's called dolphin because dolphins never really sleep. So these are people most prone to sleep issues. But they can have fine normal sleep if they just if they do all the right things, and they work with the chronotype. So these are light sleepers, okay? Essentially, these are light sleepers. They have hormonally very weak sleep signaling. If we were to hypothesize what the use of this would be, these are the guys who are going to alert the whole tribe that something's going wrong. They're going to be the first ones to wake up at any noise. 11:30 in bed, they tend to also be, if you're a dolphin, you're most likely to be a short sleeper. You're probably more likely to be a 6.5 hour sleeper than a 7 to 8 hour sleeper. Productive afternoon and evenings, and they are academic, tend to be attracted to academia, cautious, and very detail orientated. Okay, so that's the 4 chronotypes. Does that all make sense? Okay. Well, we'll talk about this to work out. So this is, you can see these wiggly lines in my terrible drawing. I've drawn onto the thing you saw earlier. So, the bear is the normal, circadian rhythm. This is how it would represent itself in you. It would represent itself in your hormonal circadian rhythm. Lions are an hour earlier, wolves, the red, is an hour later, and dolphins just have very weak signaling. That's why they don't have the same wakeful or sleep signal. And that's what it would look like. Okay, so fixing your sleep. So does anyone have any questions up until this point? No? Okay. So, first things first is to fix underlying health issues for hormonal dysregulation. And this doesn't mean you necessarily have a diagnosis of anything, of any kind. Cortisol dysregulation will be an obvious one, right? So cortisol is your stress hormone. Your body will produce more cortisol to deal with stress. If you're producing a high level of cortisol, that you're not going to go to sleep at night. You're going to be very wakeful. So, how do you deal with that? This is stress management stuff. So this would be things like meditation, changing your relationship with your mind, that sort of thing. Thyroid dysregulation, and you're going to find that these are all kind of tied together. So thyroid dysregulation also works on the circadian rhythm with cortisol. If you have thyroid issues, you have low thyroid hormone, it can disrupt your cortisol signaling, and that can cause difficulty sleeping. Blood sugar control, I would say this is the most common one. So if you have your largest meal in the evening, and then you go absolutely ham on a bunch of ice cream, for example, for dessert, so you're going to have a massive blood sugar spike, and you're going to have a corresponding massive insulin spike as well. You then go to bed and you go to sleep fine, but that insulin spike gives you a blood sugar crash. So you get a blood sugar crash around 2 or 3 in the morning, and then your body starts to make cortisol because it's hypoglycemic, and it's trying to bring up your blood sugar. So if you wake up, if you find you have a big meal in the evening, and you wake up at about 2 or 3, what's happening is your body's trying to bring your blood sugar up with cortisol, and you will not go back to sleep until your body's corrected the blood sugar and cortisol relaxes, and that usually takes about an hour. And that's a very common occurrence of more nighttime waking. I would also say around here, gut issues. Some people, if they get symptoms at night, gut issues, reflux can happen at night. That can be a problem. There's other stuff that can be a problem, but these I'd say are the main ones, with stress being the biggest one. So you schedule your sleep. So once you fix this, schedule your sleep pattern according to your chronotype. So how do you know what chronotype you are? So there is actually a questionnaire you can do online, and I'll send that to you if you would like. Yeah, there's a questionnaire you can do online. But I would say the easiest way is to think of a time, not when you were a kid or maybe in university where you probably lived like a wolf, just a time where, a night where you had a good night's sleep. How long did you sleep and you were rested the next day and you felt fine? How long did you sleep and when did you go to bed and when did you wake up? And that's a pretty good indication. If you can think back to then, that will give you a pretty good idea of what you are. If you're a bear, for example, and you try and live like a lion, you're trying to get up at 5:30 in the morning, it's doable, but probably not forever, right? If you're a wolf and you're doing that, you're going to be screwed in a few weeks. You will be. So, okay.
Why does it make you feel more tired if I sleep more? Like if I have a lie in, I often wake up feeling more groggy than when I got up at 6 a.m.
Yeah, it will probably be something to do. I actually don't know is the answer, but it'll probably be something to do with that. And I know that's true. I mean, I've noticed it myself. I suspect it's something to do with your cortisol signaling. And you're probably blunting your morning cortisol signaling if you go back to sleep. So, I would be guessing, but yeah. You can oversleep as well, right? Like if you're meant to have 8 hours sleep and you sleep for 9, 10 hours, that is also not healthy. In the same as it's not healthy to have like 5 or 6 hours sleep.
Is it possible to change actually?
Change what?
So I absolutely used to be a wolf, then having had kids, when you just all your sleep pattern goes out, I'm now much more a morning person.
Yeah. So okay. I've read that. So you're more likely to be, for instance, you're more likely to be a lion when you're a kid, and then it can change in your life. You're more likely to be a wolf when you're a teenager. But as an adult, it's difficult. It doesn't really change, no. And if that was happening, if that did happen to you, it's interesting to know if that's actually, if you actually changed from what you were before, or you were living a certain way that you weren't before, and you've changed to what you are now. I don't know. But the way you answer that is, where did you feel better? Is the way you answer that. So I've had a lot of, the odds are you're a bear, odds are, which means you have some degree of flexibility. But I mean, working out people's sleep with my clients, actually, this is a massive thing, like really digging down into what they are. Because if you're a wolf, I have a lot of wolf clients, trying to just live a normal life, it's very, very difficult actually. You're always going to feel a bit rubbish, so. Okay. So, fixing your sleep. So, these are the behaviours you should implement to try and ensure that you have the best chance of best night's sleep. So you'll decide on a bedtime and a wake time according to your chronotype. So that's obvious, we've been through that, an ideal sleep time. And this is more important than going to bed at the same time, actually, is getting up at the same time. That big spike in cortisol you see, getting that to kick in, that is what sets you up for a good night's sleep, is that getting up at the same time. So even if you haven't slept at all, you've had the worst night's sleep ever, get up at the same time every day and you're much more likely to have a better night's sleep the next night. Light on your face as soon as possible. So the research says a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes outside you want to improve your sleep. Obviously we evolved outside. Artificial light really disrupts our sleep. Artificial light's a big problem. We'll probably talk about that in a bit as well. But getting the sun on your face, that's really important. These are in order of importance. So outside much during the day, an appropriate amount of activity, that obviously means not too little. It's the Goldilocks zone, right? Not too little. If you do too much, if you go absolutely crazy every day in the gym, you're going to spike your cortisol and you're never going to get to sleep. So you don't want to do that. So you want an appropriate amount of activity, which I know you guys do here. And if you remember, after light eating was a massive thing for your sleep. You do not want to be digesting while you're trying to go to sleep. That is a signal to be awake. So 2 to 3 hours before bed, you want basically all that food to have cleared through you and be in your colon, which will then become your morning poo. So you want that cleared through before you go to bed. So eliminate screens at night. So these screens emit blue light. Blue light mimics the sun, so they are stimulating. So the light on your phone is highly stimulating. So this can be like a really big thing for some people. If you can't eliminate screens at night because of work, then I suggest buying blue blockers, which you can buy on Amazon. They're like 15 quid, and they don't look very good. You're going to look like Elton John or something like that, because they're completely orange. But they definitely work if you have to use screens. But the best thing is no screens at night, and then have a wind down routine, which will just be something relaxing, read, calm, conversation, that sort of thing. And then 30 minutes in and around your ideal bedtime, you want to go to bed, with obviously flexibility in that. Okay? Oh, yeah, important. If you wake up at night, so all the things I've talked about, so if you wake up at night, the absolute worst thing you can do is turn on the light. That is the worst thing you can do. The second worst thing you can do is eat some food. Okay, actually, moving around isn't ideal either, but believe it or not, it's not as bad as eating food or shining a light in your face. So, clients I have that struggle with sleep and they wake up and they can't get back to sleep, we work on just accepting being awake in the dark. That's actually fine. Being awake in the dark is fine, because you're still sending your body the signal that it's nighttime, just to be in the dark, okay, and getting comfortable with that. Okay, and then sleep environment. So this is probably the root cause of lots of marital arguments. I know it is in my marriage, because my ideal temperature is probably about 14, and I think my wife's is about 21. But about 18 is the ideal. And then have some circulating air. So this is actually, again, very important, darkness. Even the red light on your TV, right? Turn that off as well. Even that, turn that off. It shouldn't make a difference, but it does. And if you really can't be in a dark room or have blackout blinds, a sleep mask is good. And this is good if you're a dolphin. So if you're easily startled in the night, use a fan. That will help you not wake up. And then no phones or electronics in the room at night. Ideally, you want to turn everything off, actually. So electrical signals, this is minor, but they are slightly stimulating. Radio waves are slightly stimulating, just slightly, and that'll give you a better chance of a good night's sleep. Okay, so that's how you end the presentation. I'm just going to go briefly into what I do. So I think I spoke about this last time. So what I've actually changed in the last few weeks how I work. I used to see a client and then do some tests, suggest some supplements, and then I wouldn't see them again for 6 to 8 weeks. And what I would find was 25% of my clients would do everything I said and they get great results. 25% would do half of it and get some results, and then 50% would do, not very much, and then obviously they wouldn't get the results. So I've changed the way I work, and now what I do is I offer a 12-week program. So I want really committed clients, and I'm extremely confident that people get good results, rather than buying expensive tests. So I'll do much less tests, they're effectively buying me, because I will speak to them once a week and be in constant contact with them for 12 weeks. And we will go through everything: nutrition, sleep, stress, literally everything. And my average clients are everything from people with quite debilitating autoimmunity, gut issues, to people who just want to optimize. And generally speaking, the people, I've only been doing this for a while, but the first girl who's on this program, she's 6 weeks in now. She's got really good results, but it's because she's being consistent. So that's what I do now, and that's what I cover. And at the end of the 12 weeks, I mean, whatever your results are, you would know so much. You'd be completely empowered to feel in control of your health. So that's that. And thank you very much for attending. And this is my details, which you can, that's deadline score, which you can write down. I've got my card here. And if you've got any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them.
So you said that you shouldn't get up if
Yes,
you're awake in the night.
Absolutely.
But if you've done CBT for insomnia, they tell you if you don't go to sleep within 15 minutes, you must get up, leave the room, do something boring, then go back to bed. If you don't go to sleep after 15 minutes, get up again.
Have you done CBT?
I have.
Yeah. Did you think it was helpful?
No.
That was a better answer to my own question. Yeah, better answer than I could give. So CBT, I'm not a massive fan of. It's okay. I prefer acceptance and commitment therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy would do what I suggest. So CBT is effective for about 80% of people. Acceptance and commitment therapy has a much generally higher rate of success. The problem with CBT is if you're even slightly cynical, it won't work.
It's very strict. I mean,
Yes.
the problem for me also was I didn't know about these chronotypes,
Yes.
but they say if you're going to sleep for 6 hours, you mustn't go to bed until 12, and if you change time zones, you've still got to stick to that.
They do the whole
and
sleep
it's very, very
trick.
strict, and I found that really hard.
Yes, that is very hard. So, I mean, a sleep restriction, that can be useful, but acceptance commitment therapy is you accept what's happened to you at the time. It might not be what you want, and it might not be ideal, but you accept it for what it is, and you understand that what you're doing is the right thing to do. And then, you do a mindful practice, which would be getting to know your thoughts. What thoughts you have. Get up and go and eat something. Get up and go to the toilet. You get to know your thoughts. You basically watch your thoughts. And that has a much higher success rate, particularly with insomnia than CBT.
Yeah.
So the important thing is being in the dark. The important thing really is just knowing that you're doing the right thing, no matter how you feel, and being in the dark. That is the most important thing. Like we discussed earlier, the most important thing for sleep is your light schedule. Light hitting your eyes, or lack of light hitting your eyes, sends a signal to your hormones that we can't control. So that's the most important thing.
What are your thoughts on melatonin supplements?
Yeah, it's awesome. So when I look at the totality of it, the one concern about melatonin is that you build up a resistance. Okay, and when I look at the totality of evidence, there are a minority of studies say that's the case. Most of them say you can take it long term. Okay, generally I look to put people on melatonin and then wean them off if they have a sleep issue. The great thing about melatonin is even if you don't go to sleep, it works, because you're sending the same signal. You're telling your body what the time is, essentially. You're telling your body what the time is. So even if you don't go to sleep, your body's thinking, okay, I'm melatonin, it must be night time. So yeah.
So I'm the very rare type. I sleep 4 to 5 hours a day.
Yes.
I don't feel tired. I feel absolutely
Yes.
fine. Everybody around me is saying, "Oh, you're gonna get screwed when
Yeah.
you get much older. So you've got to sort this out."
Yes.
I can't sort it out. It's how I lived.
Yes. Well, I don't know what the percentage was, but they exist, right? So as long as you have all the stages of sleep within that short period of time, then that's the way it is, right? So, I mean, how long has that been like that for your whole life?
Pretty well, as long as I remember. I don't remember when I was a kid whether my parents forced me to sleep much longer, but since I was at uni, that's what I do.
You can't sleep longer than your genetic sleep time. It's impossible.
Right.
So I can't sleep longer than 7.5 hours, as much as I like to try. And like you said, if I do, I actually feel like crap. But most mornings I'm awake, and that's it. So you cannot sleep longer than. So if that is actually your genetic sleep type, and funny enough, my wife is like that as well. So, yeah. But if you feel fine and you feel good energy and you don't have like bone fog or anything like that, then I think that's fine. That they do exist, you do exist. So yeah, exactly.
Out of interest, who has come here because they've got sleep issues?
Not currently, but often.
Okay. Interesting.
So do any of those, do you, people who have sleep issues, do you want to ask me any questions?
I feel like I don't really fit into any of the categories.
Yeah, so that's
Because I
really
go to
common.
sleep at about 11 o'clock midnight,
Yeah.
and I get up at 6 o'clock, and I feel like I'm most productive early in the morning,
Yeah.
and then also later in the evening.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah. Do you feel stressed?
Yeah, probably quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would be like, it sounds like you're running on high cortisol. That's what it sounds like, in all honesty. So, if that, and just so you know, like stress is quite difficult to detect because your body's really good at masking over it. That's what we're built to do. And it's also like something people don't necessarily want to admit, but we're all a bit stressed, in all honesty. Like modern life is inherently stressful. Our lives now are very different to what our biology is evolved to do. So that is inherently stressful in itself. But what you just said to me is kind of classic if you're running on slightly high cortisol all the time, is that you're kind of a bit late at night, a bit early in the morning. And I'm sure if you dealt with that, which you could do, you probably find you get an extra half an hour on either end. Does that make sense?
If you fall asleep and watch the TV,
Yeah.
and then you go to bed and you're wide awake, can you count that time that you were asleep?
Yeah, it's probably not the best quality sleep though.
Not this.
Probably not, no. Like, if you just, with a screen on, it's probably not the best quality. But the most important thing about sleep is if you wake up the next day and you feel fine, just like you were saying, nothing matters then. If you wake up the next morning and you feel great, I've got energy for the day, I can do my workout, I can do my work, I don't feel like I need a nap, I don't feel a bit crummy, then it doesn't matter. If you even if you're having 12 hours of sleep and you wake up, 12 hours of straight sleep, and you wake up and you still feel a bit crummy, something's going on there, something wrong with that. So you're much better off being the person who sleeps 5 hours and feels great than 12 hours and feeling a bit crummy.
You didn't mention having caffeine later in the day, which is often.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. You're right. You're absolutely right. But I mean, so the genetic difference in your ability to detoxify caffeine is huge. It varies from 2 hours to get it out of your body to 36 hours. Okay. So if you're a 2-hour person, you can have coffee and you feel great, and you can probably have it after dinner, and you can probably go to bed and you'll be fine. If you're a 36-hour person, you have caffeine in the morning and you can't go to sleep that night. Okay, these are the people who would probably know, right, if they're really bad at detoxifying coffee. So it depends where you are on that scale, and you'll probably know, does coffee make you feel jittery, or does it make you feel good? That's the first question. The vast majority of people probably shouldn't drink caffeine, so caffeinated coffee after lunch, really. And that's the rule I keep. I do pretty well with coffee, but that's the rule I keep for myself. And even though I do pretty well with coffee, if I go off coffee for a week or something, I actually find I sleep better, funny enough. But, you know, so
Same applies for alcohol.
yeah, I didn't talk about alcohol. Reduces your sleep quality. Basically, it just reduces how much you go into deep sleep.
Do we know why?
Because your body's busy detoxifying, really, and then the byproduct of alcohol, acetaldehyde, is the nasty stuff with alcohol. Is the byproduct of alcohol is acetaldehyde. That's what gives you a hangover. That's what makes you feel hungover. So alcohol has to go through 2 phases of detoxification: phase 1 and phase 2. Alcohol goes into phase 1, comes out acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde goes into phase 2, and then it gets excreted from your body. And that's what makes you feel rubbish, and it causes oxidative stress. So that's what stops you from really dropping into deep sleep.
You said don't eat 2 to 3 hours. Don't drink 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep, or don't drink 5 or 6 hours before you go to sleep.
For alcohol?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you did alcohol with your last meal, 2 to 3 hours, then you'd probably be fine. Again, it's how well you do with alcohol. Like, there's a massive varying degree. So realistically, if you have alcohol with your meal 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep, then that's not, and it's just like a glass of wine, for example, that's not going to be a big deal. I mean, there's a whole other thing that goes into sleep, like your purpose. If you go to bed with purpose in your life, you will sleep better. And that's not something we can really measure. If you go to bed feeling included in a social community, you will sleep better. And again, we can't measure that. So for example, if you don't have alcohol, but you have no purpose, and you feel that you don't belong to a social community, your sleep will be crappy. If you have alcohol, but you have those other two things, you're probably going to sleep better. So it's all like, where should we measure the wins versus the losses? Do you know what I mean? So maybe no alcohol is absolutely ideal, but if alcohol makes you feel part of a social community because you can connect with your husband or wife or whatever it is, then you're probably going to sleep better, if that makes sense. So
there's probably a point here that's peripheral, but virtually every primitive tribe around the world, even the simplest hunter-gatherer, has some form of alcoholic beverage.
that's true. They go further than that. They actually also take drugs, most of them.
Yeah.
So they, like every human.
What are you suggesting here?
That's just the ending, but yeah, that's absolutely true.
You presume that everybody's going to have a 24-hour circadian rhythm. It is possible to have less or more, isn't it?
Yes, well that's kind of where like the different chronotypes fit in. They seem to have, they have like a wolf has a longer chronotype, and left to their own devices. So when they've done experiments where they put people in like a bunker where they have no idea what time it is, and they find that like bears go on a 24.5-hour schedule, wolves are on like a 25.5-hour schedule, lions are on a 23-hour schedule. So yeah, they absolutely do have different schedules. So without light is what controls your schedule. Without the light, then you start reverting to your type, and I don't know why that would be, but that's correct, yeah.
I'm definitely alive, and I'm definitely 23 hours.
Yes.
So the waking thing in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
and you think, well, I need to read a book or do something else. You're suggesting that you don't do that, you just lie in the dark.
Yeah.
How long does it take that lying in the dark to actually kick in and work where you're not?
As in, you go to sleep that night, or for the rest of your life?
For
the rest of
the length of the time, the week.
Okay. So, in all honesty, if you're someone who always wakes up in the night and you turn on the light and you read a book, and to stop doing that, it's probably going to take you about 1 to 3 months of just lying there and accepting it before your body goes back into accepting that that's nighttime. That's my experience, clinical experience. I don't have any scientific evidence for that or anything. So and it's a really, really difficult. So, and I have suffered insomnia myself, right? And I don't have any now at all. So when I got into this, I got it with a health condition. I had really, really bad insomnia, and it was really difficult for me to lie in bed and sit with my thoughts. But you have to approach it differently. You have to. One of the keys to sleep is not being worried about being awake at night. If you accept you're awake at night, then that stops becoming a problem, and your body stops seeing it as a stress that needs to be worried about. And paradoxically, that will result in better sleep. So the best way, the tool to do that is to just know you're doing the right thing. That's the first thing. Know you're doing the right thing, just being in the, I have with my clients, like the Olympic podium medal of sleep. Okay, so the gold medal is you're asleep. Okay, the silver medal is you're awake in your bed, in the dark, sitting with your thoughts, and just watching your thoughts, seeing what comes up. The bronze medal is you're awake in bed and you're fretting about your thoughts, and you're not doing what your mind tells you to, but you're anxious about it. It's telling you to get up and you're worried about it, or you're worried about not getting sleep. And then obviously no medal is you're up and about and around the house. So that's sort of how to think about it. And for my clients, I say, I want you in silver medal. Forget the gold medal, just silver medal. And if you can be in silver medal for long enough, you will end up in gold medal, basically. So
would you say that if you can listen to something, like a podcast or something, to stop the washing machine mind going around?
Yeah. So
is that bad? Or you say
that's stimulating. So you really, what you have to. This is sort of almost another topic that we really have to get into as well. But so mindfulness is basically the ability to watch your thoughts, right? So if you can learn to watch your thoughts, what you're doing is you're separating yourself from them. Instead of being in a storm, it's like watching a storm through a window, basically. Because anyone can do this when you leave here. Close your eyes and then say thought to yourself every time a thought comes into your head. And what you'll find is that thoughts will come into your head. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And what that teaches you is that your brain is a thought-making machine. That's how we survive, okay? It's an anxiety-creating machine because it's a survival tool. It used to be, those thoughts would be things like, is there a predator behind that bush, right? I hope my kids don't get bitten by a snake. And obviously these are not problems today, right? But the brain is the same. Our evolved brain is the same. So it gives us thoughts of, well, whatever, I'm going to get a certain disease, or what about money, or family, or a social issue, whatever it is, right? And it never stops. And that's completely normal. That is a completely normal part of the human experience. But if you can learn to watch those thoughts, and if you can watch them, then they're not you, right? Because you're watching them. So if you can learn to watch those thoughts, and then realise that your brain thinks it's helping you, so you can have compassion from your brain, you can literally change your relationship with your mind. And if you can change your relationship with your mind, then these things stop becoming troubling, and paradoxically, you will have less of them. So that is really what you want to try and do. But this is a whole other discussion. This is like something that I work on, part of my 12-week program and stuff like that. So, but with everyone, because this is an issue for everyone, and I think people don't really understand. We don't understand our own minds, how they work. You have to rebuild our own. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I think it feels very difficult to just
absolutely,
sort of think that you could do that. But
yeah, because your brain will be saying things like to you, this is stupid, get up, this is boring. But those are still thoughts. They're just thoughts. They're just a different kind of thoughts. So you can still watch those thoughts and go, oh, my brain's telling me this boring, that's interesting. It's like an old friend that gives you really crappy advice, basically. The anxiety can mark. And if you think about it like that, and you can actually get to appreciate it, if you can have sort of compassion for the fact it's doing that, it changes your relationship. If you treat it with fear, then if you pay attention to those thoughts with fear, then you're actually sending your brain a signal that they're important messages that you need to be fearful of, and it will make them more. So.
It's also the fear of not being able to cope the next day.
Absolutely, yes.
And it's not just the fear of the thoughts, what if I don't sleep?
Of course, and it's a real fear, but it's still just a thought. It's still, even if the thoughts are real, they're still thoughts.
Yeah.
And if you can focus on the fact that you're, there's a big difference between being awake in bed all night, worrying, and being awake in bed all night with this attitude, you're watching your thoughts. You will feel different the next day. So there is still, like I said to you, phase 1 sleep, actually, you're not even asleep, technically. So you are getting some rest in bed. So, and it is really difficult. All of this is very easy to say, but it's not easy to do. And it's like a lifetime practice. But that is, that's the way you accept the thoughts, and you accept that you're awake in bed, and you don't worry about being awake in bed, and that is the solution, essentially.
But if you are a person who listens to podcasts, and you found it's really helpful because it stops you thinking about things you don't want to think about, and it works for you.
Well, what I would say is, so I don't want to mess up your sleep if that's you. So, if you're feeling great every day, I just wouldn't worry about it too much, right? If you're not getting the best sleep, or you find that sometimes you're not getting the best sleep, then that's a band-aid. And the real root cause is to do what I've said, is to basically accept those thoughts. You don't want to turn those thoughts off, they're part of you, but if you can accept them, that's the solution. But, like I said, if you feel fine, and you're doing that, and you don't have an issue with sleep, then I wouldn't want to mess with that.
I have a question around waking up at night and earlier chance. Quite often I wake up at 4:35 in the morning feeling ravenous.
Yes. Interesting. That's probably to do with your blood sugar control. So you're having a blood sugar crash at 4:35 in the morning. Yeah. So what do you do? This would be depend on what you're eating at night.
Yeah.
And that would be part of the discussion. What you're eating last thing at night, and why that would be happening.
Right. Because I find the solution is that you go on the water, get half an hour and
that's
tablespoons of yogurt.
Yeah, that's 100% like a hypoglycemic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's telling you to eat like that. But then you go back to bed and you go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So interesting. It'd be interesting to know how you eat at night, because it could go either way, right? So some people they do better with the low carb at night. Some people do better at high carb at night, and that keeps their blood sugar stable.
Right.
So through the night. So you might want to think about how you normally eat. So I do much better with high carb at night, for example. So that's going to be my starchiest meal: rice, potatoes, something like that. I'll have at night, and that keeps my blood sugar stable, and then I won't wake up. I've messed around with all kinds of diets. When I did a low carb diet, I'd be waking up at 4:30 in the morning, wide awake, exactly the same as you. So that's something you want to think about.
I was going to ask actually about nutrition.
Yeah.
You talked about sort of behaviours and environments,
Sure.
and then melatonin, but are there, bananas are good to have before bed.
Yeah.
So,
So there's no right answer to this, and there's no wrong answer either. Like I just said, I know people who, if they eat carbohydrates at night, like I do, they'll be being awake at 4 in the morning, and then the opposite. So there's no right answer, and I would encourage you to mess around with different stuff there. Have the ratios of your meal. The biggest impact seems to be. So you probably always want to be getting a decent serving of protein with every meal. So that's a game changer for people if you're not getting adequate protein. Getting your 1 gram per pound of body weight is a game changer. But that aside, you want to mess around with the ratios of fats to carbs, basically. That's what I would experiment with. And think about what you normally do and what that results in, and then try the opposite. And then the stuff you're doing here, like weight training, that's the biggest thing for your blood sugar control, really. That's the biggest lever you can pull.
What about the time of exercise?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm going to send you the chronotype questionnaire, and there's something on that. I'll send it to there's something on that about when you should do everything from when you should exercise to when you're most productive. I just mentioned most productive there, and that differs from different chronotypes. I think bears, if I'm right, is in the afternoon. It's like 3 or 4 o'clock. That's when you're strongest and everything like that. But again, these things are splitting hairs. It's more important that you do an exercise than when you don't. I exercise in the morning, for instance, because that's what's convenient for me. That's not going to be consistent.
What do you say about sunlight? Does it actually have to be sunlight, or can you go out in the fresh air and it's not there because it's all?
If it's a grey day, that's fine. It's just the light. It's that there's actually like UV light. Even I don't know if you've ever had a sunburn from a grey day. I have, like in holiday in Cornwall and stuff. It's possible. So there's actually UV light coming through.
But isn't it better than you saying in a pitch black room and you don't wake up with natural kind of daylight? I prefer kind of waking up with a slightly light outside.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, you have curtains, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, when I say dark, it doesn't have to be. We're not talking living in a cave. We're just.
No, but actually, my daughter insists that she's got blackout. Things for her children, and I said, Lucy, you've got to say,
Yeah, so, okay, well,
I put tinfoil on the windows for my kids.
I do.
Yeah, I was like, get everything black, I don't want to wake up.
Yeah, that's right. It sounds like Lucy has to they better get used to getting.
Yeah, well, you try all sorts of things.
Yeah.
No, that's a fair point, and with kids, it's better to be flexible.
Yeah.
Because then you put them in not that environment, and then they don't have the flexibility.
Yeah.
But just generally dark, okay? No artificial light, that's the important thing.
Yeah, right.
That's the important thing. So when the sun comes up in the morning, that's fine.
No artificial light for children.
In the night, ideally no. But, I mean,
Sophie has a little, my daughter has a little light.
Ideally no, but I mean, if they get scared in the night,
Maybe also they can see better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old?
11 months.
Okay. Yeah, I just, with kids, they just sleep well, wherever. So if you look at like the hunter-gatherers, kids sleep well and they're strapped with like a string on their back, hanging off. Kids just sleep well, and this is more adult problems.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Should we wrap it up there? Everyone's ready to go home and get a good night's sleep?
Well.